Hey audience, you ready for a debate? Getting to know the candidates. So I'm going to introduce your moderator. Can I ask you a question? Who is the Walter Cronkite of libertarianism? It's Matt Welch. It's Matt Welch. Matt Welch is your moderator. Matt is an at-large editor at Reason and host of the Fifth Column podcast. He's going to moderate this debate. Matt Welch!
What a terrible insult is that, Andy? Thank you, everyone. Sorry for my ungainly personal tech here, but this is my randomizer machine here that randomizes the order of questions that we will have for the candidates. Thank you for inviting me to come here. I always love to come to my native state of California. Let's meet the candidates, shall we? As if you need to meet them, but let's just meet them anyways. Over here, we have media entrepreneur and activist Adam Kokesh. Lifelong libertarian activist and author Jacob Hornberger. Academic in 1996 Libertarian Party vice presidential nominee Joe Jorgensen. Entrepreneur, comic, ex-felon, Mark Whitney.
Never an ex-felon, never an ex.
Speaking of ex-felons, former Rhode Island governor and U.S. Senator Lincoln Chafee. Political satirist, performance artist, Bourbon Supreme. Okay. We are going to start. I have a randomizer machine. I've hit it already first. The way this is going to be structured, opening statements will be 90 seconds long. When I start asking questions, they will have 60 seconds to answer. If they talk smack about somebody else, that person will have 30 seconds to answer. There's a little timer up like this, and I will advise the candidates to remember that that is the upper time limit. You don't have to necessarily fill it. That can be very dramatic and interesting when you don't. So let's hear opening statements from the candidates. The randomizer says Joe Jorgensen goes first.
Okay, this is rigged because I gave mine first yesterday. So when I ran in 1996, my stump speech started like this. Republican politicians give us the political equivalent of 1-900 phone sex. They tease us and tempt us. They tell us how good it's going to be. But they never come over. They're not even trying. Not only are they not trying, they've made things worse. They say we have, they'll call the free medical or the healthcare system free market. They'll talk about privatizing when actually what they mean is we've got a government monopoly paying a company to take away our trash. So now we can't even stick to our words of free market and capitalism. Now we've got to somehow say, well, but we're not like the Republicans in that way. Now we have to create our new vocabulary. Now, what's their message? Their message is one of fear. Same with the Democrats. Either fear of socialism, which the Republicans already have, or fear that President Trump will get elected. Nothing positive.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the honor of including me in this debate. When it comes to libertarianism, there's no question that all of us in this race for your nomination are on the same overall page. But there are some differences. And I believe that one of the fundamental dividing differences in this race involves reform versus dismantling. There are libertarians who favor reforming the welfare warfare state way of life that Democrats and Republicans have forced upon our land. And then there's those of us who favor the dismantling of these programs. Now I know the assertion is going to be made that, Jacob, you're just trying to show you're more libertarian, that you're more hardcore. That's not what this is about. This is about liberty. Achieving the free society necessarily entails identifying what the infringements of freedom are and then persuading our fellow Americans to join us in removing them. Because if all that we do as libertarians is succeed in keeping the welfare warfare state serfdom intact and reforming it, we will not have achieved the free society any more than reforming slavery would achieve freedom for slaves. Freedom necessarily entails a dismantling of the structure of slavery and the structure of freedom, and that's what leads us to the genuinely free society.
Mark Whitman.
Thank you, Matt. I've got 90 seconds. I want to tell you a libertarian story about my son Chris, who is autistic. Actually, two stories. Quick A story. My campaign sponsored this convention. I told Chris he had to be here. Again, Chris is autistic. Coming out around crowds of people is not his thing. But he showed up for the reception on Friday night. And after that reception, the way he was embraced by the people in this party, some of whom were also on the spectrum, he texted me the next day and asked if he could come to Florida with me, because he wants to meet some people there who are like him. So wherever this lands, that alone was worth running for president, ladies and gentlemen. So the other story about Chris is a quick 30-second California story. Chris started a company where he invented an Xbox repair kit. He did it when he was 18. He grew that company to be a $15 million Amazon fulfillment center in the top 500 out of 2 million, while playing video games on the other monitor. So Chris has his brilliance. But here's the California punchline. When he got to 10 million in annual sales, he got a letter from the state saying, congratulations, now that you're at 10 million, you need to prepay your sales tax. So now he does business out of Oregon.
Thank you, Mark. Vermin Supreme, opening statements. Yes.
Hello, my name is Vermin Supreme, and I have a magic boot. This is a boot that has allowed me to amplify my First Amendment free speech voice exponentially. It has allowed me to communicate with millions of people around the globe and garner media from around the flat earth. And of course, I've been running for over a year now, and of course, many people still seem to only know me from the internet, from the memes, as the character who wears a rubber boot on his head. So I've been working very hard to dispel that notion. I mean, it's true, but I've been trying to get the people to understand that the boot is not attached to my head, number one. Number one, I am not my character. I am not always on, and I'm certainly not always a disruptor. I'm a very reasonable man with a very reasonable offer that I'm putting on the table. For the past 30 years, I've been running a satirical campaign that I'm sure many of you are aware of, but it has given me a high level of notoriety and an audience that spans the political spectrum and skews young, but it's young and old alike. And I believe personally that most people do in fact get it, certainly the young people, and I believe that my candidacy can make the Libertarian Party the coolest cool kids club ever. My boot will bring all the boys and girls to the Libertarians' yard. Thank you.
Adam Croquet.
I want the Libertarian Party to win. And how are we going to win? We're going to win on principle, because this is the party of principle. And we know that our principles are right and just and founded in freedom and love for our fellow human beings. I would rather lose 1,000 races and keep my integrity than lose it to win. And I would rather die on my feet than live on my knees. Speaking of living on your knees, the Democrats and Republicans have proven that you can win elections and still be losers. You You can still be a corrupt shill. Empty suits are elected every day or are holding power over us every day. Fortunately, they don't do them every day. In 2016, if voting for, if not showing up to vote was counted as a vote for nobody, Trump would have had 21 electoral votes, Hillary Clinton 72, and nobody would have had 445. We win by speaking to that silent majority.
Thank you, Adam. Wrapping up, Lincoln Chafee.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you, California Libertarian Party. Great convention here. Pleasure to join you. And I'd like to tell you why I'd like to be a candidate to represent the Libertarian Party in 2020. I believe 2020 is a tremendous opportunity for a third party. As Joe said, the other two parties have let us down. They tease us, as Joe said. I'd like to say it more bluntly, they lie to us. They say they're going to address the deficit, they don't. Both parties. They say they're going to end the war, both parties, and they don't. They say they're going to protect our civil liberties, and they don't. This is both parties. So yes, I agree, it's time for a change, and we have an opportunity as libertarians, I believe, in 2020, and this is why I'd like to be your nominee. I have been elected as a councilman, at a local level, as a mayor, served as a mayor. It's the office closest to the people. I've been a federal U.S. senator. I served on the Foreign Relations Committee and chaired the Middle East Subcommittee, traveled all over the Middle East as chair of that Middle East Subcommittee. And, this is important for libertarians, I got elected as governor of Rhode Island as an independent. I have the experience of getting elected outside of the two-party system. It was a tough fight, I barely made it, just barely got elected as governor. But most important, what I want to bring forward as your nominee is limited government to the people. I think the American people are ready for a candidate that says, leave us alone, balance the books, keep us out of war, protect our First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, 10th Amendment rights, and most of all, tell the truth. Thank you.
Thank you. Lincoln Chafee. You can stay right there. The randomizer has told me that Lincoln Chafee gets the first crack at the first question. Okay, assuming you were in the Senate, how would you have voted for the 2 articles of impeachment, and should Trump have been impeached on any other activity that he is taking as president?
I served in the Senate when Bush and Cheney and the whole crowd took us to war on the biggest lie in American history. That Saddam Hussein was a threat to the great United States of America and our vast military powers. This tin pot dictator in Iraq was a threat to the United States of America. So I say, whatever the crimes of Trump are, they pale in comparison to the crimes of that administration. And it was right from the top. Cheney, Bush, all the way down, Secretary of State, Condoleezza Rice, Colin Powell, the whole crew, Don Rumsfeld. If we can't impeach them for what they did to our military people, sitting over there on a tremendous lie, I think that what Trump did was just trivial.
So that's a no-vote. To be clear. I think I heard it all. Jacob Horberg, how would you vote, sir?
I would not have impeached him for this. You know, this is a big political circus where the Democrats realize they can't beat Trump, and this is the political version of a Hail Mary pass. I mean, foreign aid, which he was impeached for, it's a crooked, corrupt process. The whole idea of foreign aid is a bribe. Now, to answer his question directly, should he have been impeached? Absolutely. He's waging undeclared wars in violation of the Constitution. He's building a Berlin Wall down here using a Pentagon slush fund in direct violation of the will of Congress. He's raising taxes, tariffs on the American people unilaterally without congressional permission. These are the violations of the Constitution the man should have been impeached for.
No, I would not have impeached him for that. I'd like to quote Alan Dershowitz, who refers to himself as a proud Hillary supporter. And by the way, the word proud is his word, not mine. A proud Hillary supporter. He said even he wouldn't impeach him. And he's a constitutional attorney. And he points out that what we had here is we had Democrats who wanted, you know, they said they wanted to impeach him before he even took office. So what we had was a man that we wanted to take down, that's what the Democrats were doing, and we just had to find a crime. And that is very dangerous, and that is very anti-libertarian. The way the libertarian system would work is there's a crime and then we find the perpetrator. So it's a very dangerous precedent.
Mark Whitney, how would you have voted on impeachment, and has Trump committed other impeachable offenses?
January 20th, 2017, Donald Trump stood before the American people and raised his right. And he lied. He promised to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. Donald Trump told the biggest lie was his first lie. What defines the Constitution is equal protection of the law and access to justice. Donald Trump looks out the window and he sees colors of citizens. Citizens don't come in colors. If I can take my blonde hair, blue eyes, and not guilty skin pigmentation and have the run of the country, and Ilhan Omar cannot, you do not have equal protection of the law, and I would have impeached him within a week.
Bernard Supreme, how about you, sir?
Well, I would never suggest that the president was a petty gangster, war criminal, the worst since President Obama, the worst since President Clinton, the worst since on and on. Hells yeah, man, the guy's a gangster, but we knew that going in. We saw that coming, and it's not a surprise. And abuse of the party and abuse of the trust of the American people is certainly an impeachable offense. Yes. So I would vote, hell yeah! String 'em on!
Adam Kokesh, finish this up.
Yeah, I feel like I'm at a bit of a disadvantage here following all these great enthusiastic answers for getting rid of Cheeto Jesus. Excuse me, but I do believe that I have a better answer here because I would impeach everyone in Washington, D.C. And in some of these answers, I will say, it's unlibertarian to give any credibility to this system that says, well, we have a book of rules that we follow, and so therefore we respect your rights and we should have authority, and it's called the Constitution. If it's constitutional, it's okay, and if it's not, it's not. No, this is the party of principle, and it's about ethics. It's about principle and morals that apply to politics, and when we do that consistently, we see that we shouldn't be giving any power to Washington, D.C. at all. We should be taking it back for our states and for our communities, for our freedom, for our posterity.
Next round begins with Mark Whitney. So let's switch to the Democrats. We've seen now Iowa caucus, New Hampshire primary. The field is shaking itself out. Candidates, suddenly Mike Bloomberg randomly is in the mix now. Looking at the field as it stands right now, what either person or person's policies or politics or just thing, looking at the Democratic Party and imagining that could one day take power again, even as soon as 2020, what scares you the most?
Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders. Look, a few years back, about 30 years ago, I had a chance to live in socialism. You know, I spent 700 days in 5 federal prisons in my 20s. Socialism sucks. Yeah. What they do in prison is everybody gets an adequate coat. You're not warm, but you're not cold. It's adequate. Everyone gets an adequate pair of boots. You're not warm, you're not cold, it's adequate. My family is the private sector. I've been an entrepreneur for 40 years. My kids are private sector. Both my sons were financially independent entrepreneurs before they were 35. And we bootstrap companies. We don't do debt, we don't pay banks, we don't pay interest, we bootstrap. And as your nominee, I'm going to bootstrap this party. And if I'm your nominee, I'm going to look very mainstream compared to Statler and Waldorf from the Muppet Show, Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, hopped up on Flomax. It's going to be amazing.
Joe Jorgensen.
Bernie Sanders doesn't scare me so much because I look at him as an honest crook. He tells us he wants to take our stuff, and by golly, he's going to do it. So people know what they're going to get. Who scares me is Tulsi Gabbard. Yes, she is awesome on foreign affairs, and I would agree with her on pretty much everything I've heard. But the problem is she is so much more of a socialist than anybody realizes. In fact, we've all heard about how Hillary Clinton is, said that Tulsi Gabbard is a Russian spy and all that. What people forget is that the reason Hillary has such a personal vendetta against Tulsi Gabbard is Tulsi voted for Bernie Sanders in 2016. So I've seen a lot of people in the Libertarian Party hear Tulsi Gabbard's foreign affairs talk, and then they somehow think that she's free market and everything else, but she's not. She's as big of a socialist as Bernie Sanders. Yeah. She just doesn't disclose it.
All right, Adam Kotek.
Nothing scares me, man.
I know, I was going to say, I know nothing scares you, Adam, but
But I'll tell you why, in this context, nothing scares me. Because as a libertarian, as someone who has devoted my life to this cause, as someone who believes in freedom, while I know the evils of government, I know the evils firsthand from having seen them in combat. I know the worst that government is capable of. And as libertarians, we're very aware of this. We know the evils that government is capable of. But we also know the promise and the inevitability of freedom and righteousness. And as MLK said, the arc of history bends towards justice. We will achieve nothing less than a world set free in our lifetime. And when you feel that, when you embrace that vision, when you dig deep in what it means to be a libertarian, nothing's going to scare you either.
Vermin Supreme.
I believe that if we do not teach the children about economics and liberty, they will learn it from the socialists. That is my concern. I just came from the New Hampshire primary, and to see those crowds, see those electrified kids, see those kids so fired up and getting their political awakening, it's a very wonderful and impressive thing to see these kids so fired up. But let me say this about that. These kids these days are poly-flexible. They are politically flexible. They are feeling things out. They are trying things on. They are seizing on ideas that seem to make sense to them. And it is incumbent upon us to present our vision and our alternatives and our systems of belief that will bring them towards liberty and bring them towards freedom and away from the Democratic Party. I believe that in a lot of circumstances, I am the second choice of many of these Bernie kids, second choice of a lot of the Yang Gang, second choice of a lot of the Tulsiites. It's weird, but it's true, and I think I can bring them our way.
Jacob Horberger, what is frightening in the Democratic field to you?
I'm with Adam. I don't think anything about this party, the Democratic Party, should scare us. They have a rotten philosophy. And their philosophy is nothing to be scared of. Franklin Roosevelt, a Democrat, introduced the socialism into our welfare state with Social Security. Then his protege, Lyndon Johnson, another Democrat, brings us Medicare and Medicaid that succeed in destroying what had been the finest healthcare system in history. And then what is their solution? Their solution is more socialism. I mean, that's not even logical. But I think it's also worth pointing out that not only have they destroyed economic liberty in our country, they have destroyed family values with Social Security. They destroyed health care. And oh, by the way, the Republicans are no different. They're as wedded to this rotten philosophy as the Democrats.
Thank you, Shaky. Take us out of this now.
I also am not scared of the Democrats, but for a different reason. I like what I'm seeing, the disarray in that party. Iowa, a fiasco. Impeachment, a fiasco. They had to get 2/3 of the senators for impeachment. It wasn't ever going to happen. A total train wreck. And don't forget that when the dust all settles, half of the Democratic Party is going to be mad at the other half of the Democratic Party. If the progressives win, the moderates are going to be mad. If vice versa, and they're going to be looking for another party in 2020. And that's why we have to make good decisions. I have been elected. I've seen the political process unfold. And 2020 is going to be a great year for libertarians because of the chaos of the Democratic parties. Iowa fiasco, impeachment of fiasco, a split party, moderates fighting progressives, Michael Bloomberg now being accused of all sorts of gender crimes. And it's great. It's great for libertarians. We're going to seize the advantage.
All right, new round. Randy Meisner tells us that Joe Jorgensen's going to go first on this. Okay, we're in California. I have heard that immigration has been an issue, public policy issue in California on occasion here. It's not something that every single Libertarian Party member agrees with one another. What is your vision of a Libertarian-run immigration system look like?
My vision of immigration is exactly as stated in the party platform. Just like every other topic, I follow the party platform down the line. Right now, we've got a system in which we keep everybody out except we just let a few people in. What we need to do is flip it and just let everybody in. And if we know of a few terrorists, perhaps keep them out, but we need to have open borders. And a lot of the scare tactics that the Republicans and Democrats are using just don't hold water. And I'd also like to point out that I'm the granddaughter of 3 immigrants. And I used to listen to my grandmother tell me stories about how wonderful America is and how when you earn money, you can keep it. And let me tell you, she was not rich. She lived in, well, I would call it a trailer, and she would correct me and say, no, it's a mobile home. But she loved living in her mobile home, said America was the greatest country that she could do that. And so I think we need to open our borders to other people like her.
Adam Kokesh, what's the immigration plank in the book that's in front of everybody?
Thanks for the plug, man. I appreciate that.
My 5-year-old was reading it out there.
Yes! Winning over the youth, one book at a time. Well, the whole immigration debate is another statist false framing. Are you pro or anti-immigration? The question is, what's a legitimate border? Government borders are not legitimate. Only private property borders. Simple as that. If you want to not associate with people, you have the right to keep people off your land, out of your community. If you want to band together and have a certain kind of grouping of people in a community, you should have the right. And that's the only place controlling freedom of movement is effective on that small scale. Freedom of movement, limited only by private property, is a basic human right. And if being American means anything about standing up to unjust authority and employing civil disobedience, I would dare say most people who come here illegally are more American than the average apathetic American today.
Thanks for the headline. Nikki Chafee, what is your ideal immigration policy?
Once again, I see this as a political advantage that with our open border policy and libertarian views on immigration, especially the fastest growing voting bloc in the United States, the Hispanics, are going to have the opportunity in 2020 to look at our platform and come to our side. And believe me, I hate to generalize, but I got elected governor with the help of the Hispanic vote. If it hadn't been for a Hispanic vote, which is what I promised them, they're single issue voters. I hate to generalize, but they generally look just at what's happening with immigration policy and make their decision. And we have a great opportunity once again as libertarians to appeal to the fastest growing voting bloc in the United States to help grow our party. So let's do it in 2020. Thank you.
Jacob Hornberg.
One of the proudest positions that we have in this party is our open border plank. We stand for those that are unable to defend themselves, and we stand for it because we favor liberty. I grew up on the Texas-Mexican border. I know what y'all are going through here. I grew up on a farm on the Rio Grande. We hired illegal immigrants. I have seen this crisis up front my entire life, and it is a perpetual crisis. It will never go away because this is a socialist system. It's based on central planning. And in order to enforce it, they have brought into existence a police state. Y'all know about the checkpoints. We got them over there. I've been stopped by the Border Patrol myself when I was in high school. Opened up your trunk. warrantless searches onto our farm to bust our workers. It's a police state, and there's only one solution to it: dismantle it all. People have a fundamental God-given right to cross borders like human beings and not die of thirst and dehydration on the desert in the back of 18-wheelers.
Mark Whitney.
I agree with everything Jacob said, but this is also a market problem. People like cocaine, and they're going to do cocaine no matter how many laws you make that say cocaine is illegal. And you know who knows that better than anybody else? The people who own privately owned, publicly traded prisons. So if you can get the regulators to create a conflict in the market, and again, Jacob can talk about this better than me because he's the guy that talks about markets. It's not just the feds. It's not just the Fed. You say no cocaine, there's going to be cocaine. And the people that are at the border are there because of the conflict we created in the free market. These are refugees and asylum seekers who have the clothes on their back and travel hundreds of miles. And I not only want them to be citizens, I want them working on my campaign.
Yeah. And Vermin Supreme.
You cannot outlaw people. If you outlaw people, only people will be outlaws. This is America. We have vast open spaces for giant, massive, squalorous refugee camps. And these camps have been the heart. They've turned into cities in other places. They've been long-term. The people live there. They create their own spaces. They create their own cultures. They create their own economies. Yes, they may be squalors, but we can make that happen here. I mean, maybe wall, maybe no wall, maybe a giant casino across the southern border that would attract migrants where they could be taught valuable skills, sort of a citizenship through indentured servitude, perhaps. There are many options and many options on the table, and I'm willing to entertain them all. But I believe that a libertarian platform based on the refugees crisis would certainly be fair and great for all. Thank you.
All right, let's get some more disagreements up here if possible. That was a little bit too cozy with everybody. Joe's going to go first on this. There is a lot of policy agreements among you on various things. What is one attribute, one policy plank, one thing about you that you have and the rest of them don't, that pertain to the, what do you call it, electability, or a reason why you should be elected? Would tell them why, what you have that's different than
I'll give my answer and you can follow
Thank
up.
you.
So as I mentioned yesterday, I'm principled and practical. As you hear each of us give an answer, what you have to ask yourself is, does this follow the party platform? Is it purist? And is it something that will win over people out there? I'm tired of being a debating society. Yes, I get excited about all of these very extreme libertarian, what people out there call extreme libertarian. Our positions are not extreme. We need to phrase them in a way that we sell it to other people. Thank you. I'd like to quote Ed Clark, 1980. Somebody asked him, do you have a chance to win? And his reply was, if I could sit down at the kitchen table of every family in America and explain libertarianism to them, yes, I would win by a landslide. And I believe we can do it, but we have to talk about what they want, not what we want.
Supreme, are there any unique qualities to your candidacy that the others don't?
Well, I do have a magic boot. And of course, vast reservoirs of political goodwill and good vibes and massive outreach. Got a leg up on that with the young people across America. I recently became a TikTok star. I have 100,000 followers on TikTok of all places. I recently had an interview in Teen Vogue magazine. I I have the ears and the eyes of the kids, and the media are paying attention, and just my appearance in this race has certainly been bringing a lot of attention and a lot of eyeballs, and people are having to give the Libertarian Party a second look, because I'm trying to demonstrate to them that it is not what they think it is. Thank you.
Lincoln Chafee, unique attribute to you.
Well, in Rhode Island, we have a very vicious talk radio environment. And I have some scars from the talk radio wars. And a lot of those scars come from standing up for libertarian values. We overlap, particularly the Iraq War. Chafee's abating the terrorists day after day on the talk radio. Edward Snowden, when I defend Snowden, Chafee's going off the rails defending this guy that's exposing our country to different security risks, deficits. Chafee would give us our tax dollars. Capital punishment. When I was governor, there was a prisoner that the federal government wanted to expose to the death penalty. I said no, I wouldn't sign them over to the federal government. The talk shows went nuts. They even brought in the family of the victim. A sad case. He was a murderer, but I'm against the death penalty, so I did not want to send him over to the federal government. Free trade, war on drugs. I have some scars. Defending libertarian values.
Jacob Portman, unique attributes to you.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's constructive to compare myself with anybody else, including the candidates, but I will say this, that anybody on this stage and anybody that's running for this nomination would make a better president than Pete Buttigieg, Warren, Trump, the whole kit and caboodle of them. And that's what we need in this country, is a libertarian president and a libertarian Congress. Look, those of you know my record. I believe in principles of this party. They are our greatest asset. When I was asked to join the platform committee back in the 90s and I read the platform, I was bowled over. I said, my gosh, this really is the party of principle. And I think that if you're going to adopt this label for yourself as a party, you've got to live up to that label. And that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. I mean, our principles are our greatest asset. And I say, let's go into this battle with our weapons. They have the money, they have the power, we have the principles, the ideals, and sound ideas on liberty. Let's fight this battle with our weapons.
Mark Whitney, unique experience, attributes.
Principles and ideals are really important. You also need a great story. My family has this story. I have the story. The story is called Fool for a Client. It landed me on the cover of Story magazine with Drew Carey and Russell Brand. My favorite city to perform that story in is Washington, D.C. I also have the legal software company, 40,000 lawyer subscribers. I have the contact information on the subscribers. I email Washington, D.C. I tell them I'm coming to town. There's going to be a show called Fool for a Client, where a high school graduate convinced a Supreme Court justice to declare his prison term unconstitutional. And these federal prosecutors and their spouses sitting in that audience, at the end of that show, they are in tears, cheering for the libertarian, because my libertarian story reminds these people what they forgot they believe. Yeah. We are a libertarian people with an authoritarian government. And besides that, if you can't get a laugh, you can't be president.
Well, as you know, Matt, my platform is fundamentally different in that, unlike anybody else on this stage or with the Democrats or Republicans, I'm not actually running for president to be president. I'm technically running for the office, but the platform is to resign on day one, to take the federal government through a peaceful, orderly, responsible bankruptcy process. I'm not putting on the ring of power, I'm going to throw it directly into the fire. Keeping the federal government of the United States of America alive is not practical. This is the only platform with localization that has the potential to unite all Americans, to bring people together around basic American values, respect for each other's freedom, respect for the ability to have a system in your community based on your values, that meets your needs. This is the only practical, the only principled, the only unifying platform, and that's how we win.
All right, we have a new round beginning with Vermin's Dream. This will be a series of individualized questions to the candidates. So this for you, Vermin. You're bringing a sense of comedy or sense of a new approach, let's say,
Yes, sir.
towards your candidacy. How do you expect to compete against a president who himself brought a hell of a new approach, who himself is an insult comic and a reality TV show host and a bunch of other things? Why wouldn't the person who wants the crazy guy just vote for the one who they already elected as president?
Well, it is arguable that I helped pave the way for Donald Trump. But I believe there's a very real difference between the two of us and our use of humor as a transformative tool. And I believe he is considerably more mean-spirited in his use of humor, and I believe that my humor presents love and acceptance and is used as a force of good to make fun and poke holes at the arguments made by the duopoly. And that is I've been presenting my critique of the duopoly and the government and the free things they want to give away and the surveillance state and the police state and the concentration camps, and by using all these terms I've been making a lot of fun of it. And I believe that my sense of humor and my use of humor is much more open and appreciative and welcoming to the people at large. Thank you.
A couple of people walking around the halls have made a comparison of you to me as being a little bit like Mike Bloomberg, in the sense of you're kind of coming in late to the race and throwing around a lot of money, hired a bunch of talent. What do you say to those people to assuage their fears that you just buy this thing up?
Well, I don't have Bloomberg money. I mean, I lived in a little town in Vermont, 200 people. My wife and I have known each other since the 6th grade. She's sitting here today. Last month, Julie got her law degree. She came in number 2 in her class. I think that's going to come in really handy at my impeachment. You know, I think the whole Bloomberg thing is really interesting, but the fact of the matter is, having a little money is not a bad thing, because here's what I'm going to do when I talk about money, right? As your nominee, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go on Jimmy Kimmel. I'm going to ask him a couple of questions. I'm going to say, Jimmy, what do you want to be your president? Trump pays lawyers, lawyers pay me. What do you want to be your president? I'm going to say, I got my name on the ballots in all 175,000 voting precincts with my money, but it was less than what Trump paid Stormy Daniels. Who do you want to be your president? Come on!
Ordinance that I'm made to understand that you've made comments along the lines that you'd rather, or you're more focused on growing membership than getting votes. Aren't you running for president? And isn't the job of the president to get votes? Here, explain yourself.
Yes, I am running for president, and I do not expect to win. I see this as a different function, a different type of office to run for than the lower levels. I believe that we need to run qualified candidates at the state and local level to win. And I think we need the presidential candidate to support that, to come around and create excitement, and to also help them with their campaigns. So, and I'd like to give you just a little bit of the Libertarian Party history. When Harry Brown ran in 1996 with me as a running mate, our goal was membership, and we did very well. In 2000, he went after votes and did not do as well. So what we've seen in the past, what works is going after membership, not votes. At least at the presidential level, not the lower levels.
Mr. Chafee, let's do a little word association. Bill Weld.
Mixed up man. I know what he wants.
But so the people who are talking about your candidacy within the party, they bring him up every single time. Like someone who seems to be switching parties at an alarming rate and kind of landed on libertarianism for a while, and we'll see how long that lasts. What do you say to those people?
I can promise I'll never go back to the Republican Party, the party of deficits and wars and infringing our personal liberties. And I can also promise I'll never say anything positive about Hillary Clinton. And I'm not going anywhere. I've truthfully been at other parties, but this is the party of anti-war, anti-deficit, personal liberties, free trade, against capital punishment, against crony capitalism. I have the scars on all those issues in public office, and I found my home. I'm staying. And I want to help grow the party, as Joe does also.
Take your point further after your experience with the Libertarian Party in the 90s and 2000. You wrote that the Libertarian Party needs a divorce. You ran as an independent, I believe, in 2002. What do you say to those people here who don't exactly share your same critique at the time with Harry Brown, and to assuage their concerns about that falling out that you have with them?
I took the position 20 years ago that ethics matter in this party, and that if we send a message to the American people that ethics are not important to us, we're dead in the water politically. Because then we become like Republicans and Democrats. And so I got involved in a fight that took on the party hierarchy. I believe that when you believe something, then you've got to stand for it, regardless of the price that has to be paid. And I've written about this episode in my new book, My Passion for Liberty. I've reprinted that chapter 21, on my website, jacobforliberty.com. But here we are today. You look at Democrats and Republicans with massive ethical violations, conflicts of interest, Biden and his son. You've got Mitch McConnell over there with his relationship with China and his father-in-law. You got the military staying in Trump hotels. We have to convince the American people that if you entrust us with political power, our party stands for the highest of ethical principles, unlike these two other parties.
Adam Kokesh, you want to localize everything. And I think I even heard you sort of say that people who hold up the Constitution and wave it around instead of thinking about first principles sometimes are getting it wrong. So, all right, you on day one dismantled the federal government for beginning the liquidation of bankruptcy.
It's going to take longer than a day, Matt. I mean, let's be reasonable here.
So it'll take a week, or on the seventh day, there will need to be rest.
No, this is a well thought out multi-year plan.
Yes, and I'm not even, that's just a wind up for the question, so don't hit me yet, we haven't started yet. So the local government decides we're going to have a public school in which black kids can't come, that we're going to segregate against them. We have the 14th Amendment is incorporated to the states and localities that prevents that from happening. In the Kokeshian universe, what happens in that case?
Well, I think what we have is this incredible contradiction within the movement where we hear this critique of it. If you give people freedom, they're going to do bad things with it. Or, hey, if we have people criticize my platform for being too moderate because it's going to allow states to be sovereign and Native American tribes to be sovereign. Say, well, some of them are going to go backwards. I have way more confidence in freedom and human progress, don't you? I'm not going to say that because a small government might do something bad, that we need a bigger government to protect us from them. That's nonsense. We see no ground on principle when we talk about localization. Localization is the everybody gets what they want strategy. You get government down to the community level. A community is a voluntary group that you can choose to be a part of and you can choose to leave at any time. That's freedom. That's what can unite everybody in this country. And again, that's how we win.
New round, Mark Whitney goes first. I believe over the last 3 months of 2019, the Trump re-election campaign and the Republican National Committee, which of course has been merged, raised a combined total for those 3 months of $154 million. During that period, or actually since all of you announced, the best I can handle with calculators and FEC documents, that represents in those 3 months 500 times the amount that the entire Libertarian presidential field has raised so far for the entire election. So, question, what is your realistic path towards fundraising? What's a goal? How do you overcome that just colossal, ridiculous deficit?
Super easy. The Republicans and Democrats get a ton of coverage because they have money. They're boring. They have money. It's the only reason they get media. We win with story. Story wins. I believe when the Wall Street traded media hear my story, there's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars of free media. I believe that. I was talking to Judge Gray yesterday, who came to my breakout session. And we had a great talk for about 20 minutes. He's got a book out, and he shook my hand and he said, "We are comrades." And I said, "You know what? There's a story that we can pitch to the New York Times about two men in their 60s who came to a career in the law through different paths. One as a judge, one as a defendant, but they landed in the same spot. Part of this is comfort zone and imposter syndrome in this party. People say a libertarian president doesn't happen. I've had many things in my life that do not happen. But if you can imagine it, then it's possible."
Judge Wilkinson, since the last time I asked you this question, you've raised like $8,000. So what's a realistic path towards raising money in this party and competing against the Leviathan of the two major parties in Canada?
Well, again, this just supports my assertion that we need to go after membership as opposed to votes. In fact, it's simple math. If you look at different elections, there's a price per vote, and we do not have the money to pay to get that many votes. So what we need to do is have outreach. We need to be smarter. We need to go after the younger people who are more naturally libertarian anyway. We need to use other ways of getting to them, such as social media, and we need to support the local candidates. My campaign manager says he believes that the Libertarian, I'm trying to quote him right and not paraphrase, but he said that he believes the first Libertarian president will be elected in 2020, and he quickly adds, not as president, but as city council or something else. So that's what we need to do. We need to focus on the local races so that later on they can become president.
Lincoln Chafee, is there a realistic path towards matching Gary Johnson's $12 million last time?
Even if it is 12 million, it's a long way from what the major parties can raise, and that's just the reality. It's like we're looking at Mount Everest, but let's not despair. 2020 is going to be a special year, I believe. Split Democratic Party, Trump being Trump, chaotic. Even he's firing so many people, all the families of the people he's fired are going to want to look for another party. Libertarians, we're going to be there. Money does count. I'm not naive in campaigns. I've always been outspent every single campaign I've been in, that I've won. I think 10 out of 12 races I've been in. But it's the issues in the end. It's the issues. And more than anything, the wars that both parties keep getting us into and escalating, the deficits of both parties keep getting us into and escalating, and the compromising of our personal liberties that Edward Snowden pointed out. And they're just not telling the truth. So in the end, it's the issues. And that trumps, forgive me, that's better than any amount of dollars when you tell the truth.
Department Secretary, what is your thought out plan for overcoming the fundraising gap, or just addressing fundraising? What's your approach?
Well, I have always run a shoestring campaign, and that shoestring holds up my pants. I have always done less with more. I believe that I have a proven track record of earning media that could not be bought. And I believe that if given the nomination, there will be a tidal wave of media interest, and we will have to spin it, and we will have to use it. We will have more media attention than we will even know what to do with. So yes, there will be explaining, but we will use that to our advantage. Can we turn it into a viral marketing, fundraising phenomenon? I believe that it can. I believe if we make it catch and we all push together, yes, we can have 12 million kids send in $1. Sure, you betcha, it's going to happen.
Jacob Bornberg, what's your approach towards fundraising question?
Well, when Eugene McCarthy ran against Lyndon Johnson in the '68 primary in New Hampshire, he had 4 or 5 donors funding his campaign because there was no campaign finance limits. And that's why they put the limits in. It's a protection racket that protects them from competition where big donors could donate to our campaigns. How do we counteract that? Well, they're not going to repeal their idiotic law of campaign finance. But I believe that using our weapons, principles, ideals, sound ideas on liberty, abolish the Federal Reserve, open the borders, stop the death and destruction, stop the state-sponsored assassinations. That's the counteract to all the money and power they have in the world. Look, people are sensing that there's something wrong in this country. They know that something's wrong. All they have to do is think at a higher level, and that's our job, to cause them to think about what does it mean to be free, what is the role of government in a free society. And once people start thinking at that level, I think that's going to counteract all the money and power in the world.
Adam Kokesh, as the fundraising leader of the field, your thoughts as we take out this topic.
Well, where do the Democrats and Republicans get their money? Bribes, kickbacks, corruption, and I guess there's the Stormy Daniels approach as well. But aside from that, we know that the money they're raising is based on false promises. It's based on corruption. And we're never going to win with more money, and we should be proud of the fact that we're not going to win the same way that Republicans and Democrats do. We win with the truth. We win by speaking to the silent majority who is sick of that corruption, sick of their taxes going to special interests, sick of the drug war, sick of the criminal justice system ruining lives. They're sick of this. We speak to that silent majority. We can unite all Americans because they're sick of having a government that acts like it owns us rather than serves us. And we have proven now with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency that we don't need government to have money in the first place.
It's going to be a lightning round for the hell of it, because you can answer yes or no, in fact. So let's, can you do the 30-second one for this one? Please, thank you. Starting with Adam Kokesh here, will you tonight pledge to share your donor mailing list with the Libertarian Party?
Absolutely, and I'll go one step further, and I think it's been great how generally this group of candidates has been running as a team, and I gotta say, for everybody who supported any of them and helped them get around to the convention so far, thank you for ensuring that 2020 is going to be an amazing year for the Libertarian Party. One of the things that I did for Ron Paul was the Veterans for Ron Paul March on the White House. We are going to march on the debates with a massive formation of veterans, and I'll do this for any nominee on stage here, veterans for whomever it is, and we will demand that the Libertarian be led, and we will shut down debates if we have to. If you don't let the Libertarian debate, the veterans in this party will not let the Republicans and Democrats debate either.
Chief of the Orange, will you share your mailing list with the party?
Absolutely. I mean, we're all in this together. We may be up here debating each other, but we have one goal in this party, and that has been the goal of this party since the party was conceived in David Nolan's living room in 1971 in Colorado. And that is the achievement of a free society. That's what unites us, and that's what we got to keep aiming for.
For a very reasonable fee, because that's the Libertarian way. Thank you.
Yes, I put my money where my mouth is, and I keep talking about membership. Two things. First of all, Joe Heltman, my campaign manager, and I went to the LNC meeting a couple weeks ago, and we gave them a proposal telling them that we would share our data. So we've already got that in writing, and the LNC has that. Secondly, on my website, right next to the donate button, we've got a button that says join the LP, and we just added more members today. So even at the cost of perhaps somebody clicking the join LP instead of the donate button, we've got the join the LP button.
Yes, in Rhode Island, I was always a member of the minority party. The Republicans could meet in the phone booth in Rhode Island, so I'm used to working together with the party to grow the party, walking with other candidates, helping them raise money, sharing all our data with the party, no matter who it is, trying to grow the party and get it out of the phone booth in Rhode Island. In fact, we had some success, obviously, but I'm used to it and commit to doing that as a Libertarian.
And Mark Whitney.
Of course, we'll share the list. Not only will I share the list, I'm someone in my 20s who violated the first rule of holes. When you're in a hole, stop digging. In my 30s, I dug out. In my 40s, I rebuilt. In my 50s, I killed it. My 60s is dedicated to this party. For free, I spend a lot of my time coaching speakers. There's a presidential candidate in this party named Eric Gerhardt. He got one vote. That was me that voted for him. He traveled 3,000 miles. He's a carpenter from New Hampshire. We need another 10,000 Eric Gerhardts, and as your nominee, I'll make sure they get trained.
All right, let's go to a new round. Lincoln Chafee, you can start. What is your analysis of how this party has managed itself since 2016? What has it done well? What has it not done well in terms of messaging, membership, anything? The ball is in your court.
Well, 2016 was when I think the Libertarians really came on the national stage and became the major third party. And give yourselves credit, Gary, and I know how much we're mad at Bill, but they got the party as really the third party in this country. And now as we see what's happening in 2020, as I've said, the opportunities there more than ever, I believe, a fractured, dysfunctional Democratic Party, Trump being Trump, chaos every day, you never know what's going to happen next. 2020 is our year, and look forward to being the nominee and carrying on the momentum that Gary and you created in 16. As an outsider, I looked at the statement of principles. I said, this is the answer.
Bourbon Supreme, how would you assess the LP's performance since 2016?
I believe internally the party is growing. I believe it's transforming. From what I've witnessed, bought immunity is becoming a real and actual thing. The willingness of the anti-authoritarian right and the anti-authoritarian left to understand that yes, they have differences about what their utopias, respective utopias might look like, but the fact of the matter is many people who have been at each other's throats and in arms and against each other and fighting against each other are coming together to work together on the common goal of creating a post-state society. So I believe that is a very good thing indeed. Thank you.
Jacob Horberger, you came back in. What have you observed in terms of the way the party has conducted itself since 2016?
Yeah, I can't really address what the party's done, but I can tell you some of the consequences of what the party's done. I've been traveling to state conventions now since last year. I don't know the total, 16, 17, something like that. And I can tell you that I have never seen such a high level of excitement and energy in this party. It's phenomenal. I mean, in Tennessee, for example, the state convention, they had 50 people running for 28 delegate slots. In Nebraska, 30 people running for 8 or 9 slots. And it's been that in every single state. They have more people running than slots available. I don't know if that's unprecedented, but I'm absolutely amazed by it. And you can feel the electricity. You can feel the energy. There is something going on here. And I don't know what the officials in the party did to bring this about, but whatever they did, it was right because it is very exciting.
Mark Whitney.
So one of the things we need to do, so much of communication has to do with how you frame it. We need to stop referring to ourselves as a third party. It sounds like third wheel. Don't call yourself that. As it applies to the office of the president, the United States is already a three-party system. And the backbone of this party that makes that possible, in no small part, are people who are on the spectrum like my son, who spent 50 years building that backbone. And we honor that when we stop calling ourselves the third party and start to understand there's one pipeline to the Oval Office, and we all created and contributed to having access to the same pipeline as the people that have all the money. All you need to know is how to frame it. Imagine, presidents get to assign ideas. Jeff Bezos owns the Amazon Post. The main navigation menu gives you a choice of news, opinion, politics. How would it be different if they changed politics to self-government? Because that's what's at stake.
Joe Jorgensen.
Yes, I had the same experience that Jacob had. I went to New Hampshire and they had something like 18 people fighting over 11 slots for delegates. And people said to me, wow, we've never seen anything like this. So then I went to the Georgia convention later on and they said, you know, something's going on in Georgia. We've got so many more people who want to go to the national convention than we usually have. And I said, funny, I heard that in New Hampshire. And then finally, when I went to Nebraska, my campaign manager and I had breakfast with Laura Epke, and she said, you know, our party is really growing. We've got more delegates. And once again, I said, you know, I hear what you're saying in Nebraska, and I'm hearing the same thing in Georgia, same thing in New Hampshire, so I hear it everywhere I go. The other thing I hear about, which is exciting, is I hear in every state people saying, you know, this is a great crop of candidates. Usually we don't have so many good presidential candidates to choose from, and this year we've got great people to pick from.
And Adam Kokesh.
Well, at the risk of getting a little too inside baseball here, I want to thank both Joe and Jacob for bringing up the delegate numbers. And I want to bring some praise to my campaign manager, Elijah Gitzarelli. If you would please stand up, because the first goal of this campaign was to make sure that every single delegate slot in the country was competitive this year. And that's why we started so early, and we're doing it, as they pointed out. This is an amazing year of growth for the Libertarian Party. The reason this is so important, Gary Johnson and Bill Weld won the nomination last time by filling empty seats. There will be no empty seats in Austin, Texas in May 2020, and this party will have a candidate who represents the principles that bring us together.
All right, new round. Joe Jorgensen goes first. What does failure look like for the 2020 Libertarian Party presidential nominee? What could be a number? Probably could be a number. The number of anything you want, number of votes, number of memberships in your case. But what threshold, if the party is under it, will you look at it, regardless of who's the nominee, and say, we screwed up?
During the Gary Johnson, the previous campaign, they grew the party by 7,500 members. In '96, we grew the party by 8,500 members. I'd like to see the party grow by 10,000 members. We need to fill all the levels, and the only way to do that is to get more people into the party. Another measure I would look at is how often are we talked about? Where do we appear on the news? Are other people hearing about the Libertarian Party? And are they hearing about the Libertarian Party in a positive manner? Where they say, yes, that is an option for me. I think, I never realized it before, but I guess I'm a Libertarian.
Bourbon Supreme, what does failure for the Libertarian Party in the presidential race in 2020 look like to you?
Failure is not an option. We will succeed, and we will succeed on our own terms. If we all work together and pull together and share our common goal of spreading the word of liberty to the masses, the young people, the old people, the people of the upper classes, the people of the lower classes, we will have succeeded. We define success on our own terms as we define ourselves, and we will succeed. Thank you.
Obviously, you have to read one of this for Adam. What's a threshold under which you want to, or over which you want to burst through?
I think it's very reasonable that if we nominate a candidate who can speak to that silent majority, who has a unifying platform that's practical, that immediately gives everybody more of what they want, then we can make a black swan happen. We can win in 2020. Now, if we don't hit that, if we don't make that sudden paradigm shift or that magic moment happen, I think if we nominate a candidate with those strengths, we can still bring people together. And I think we should be shooting for having a breakout year for the Libertarian Party. Some people say that's 5%. I think it's reasonable to expect that if we build on Gary's 3.25, I think we can double that out of conventional, traditional voters. And if we have a message that speaks to that silent majority, and what I hear more often than anything else on the campaign trail with this platform is, you know, I don't normally vote, but I would come out and vote for that. If we give people that, we can have a breakout year for the Libertarian Party. I think breaking 10%, if not winning, should be a reasonable goal for us in 2020.
Jacob Warnberger, what does failure look like?
I think this year presents the greatest opportunity in the 49-year history of this party. This is not the time to falter. This is not the time to hesitate. This is time to hit these people and hit them hard with our principles. I don't have any delusions of grandeur. do not believe there's a realistic chance to be elected president, but I will tell you this. You make me your nominee, and I will fight to win this race. I will fight to defeat these parties because they deserve to be defeated. And we hit them hard, and we set them on their heels, and we hit them again, and then we break through that line, and I think we can do some very serious open field running. If we squander this opportunity to run a libertarian campaign that employs libertarian principles, if we fail to do that and we run a Republican-light or a Democrat-light campaign, that will be the measure of the failure of this party.
Lincoln Chafee, what does failure look like to you?
Well, I'm not naive either, and I'd set the first threshold as getting in the debates. And yes, it's a corrupt system, but let's beat the corrupt system and get in the debate. That's the first threshold. The next threshold is to win some states. And then if we win some states, then we go into the House of Representatives. And then we're a broker. We can demand certain things on the issues for our votes. I mean, ideally, like in 1824, when Andrew Jackson went into the House of Representatives, the people were so bad, how badly they screwed Andrew Jackson, he easily won in 1828. So get your momentum going, get in the debates, exceed the threshold, win some states, Alaska, Wyoming, who knows, get into the House of Representatives and make some noise.
And Mark Whitney.
Failure is falling into the false choice between embracing your principles and trying to win. Once every 4 years, we come together, we have this backbone, we nominate somebody to be president. I'm not running for president because I'm a libertarian. I'm running for president because I'm worried about the country. I just happen to be libertarian. So after Austin, the day after, we need to forget that there's a general election on November 3rd. We need to focus like a laser on the debates. And I will pledge one thing to you right here, and you can take it to, I was going to say the bank, you can take it to Bitcoin. As your nominee, I will be at all 3 debates. The only question is, will I be on stage or will I get arrested 3 times?
Yeah, go ahead.
Mark, you don't just happen to be a libertarian. You're a libertarian because you're caring, compassionate, you're right about the issues, and you're a good person.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, new round. Jacob Hornberger is going to go first. All of you have run at various times, I think, for various offices. What from a previous experience of running for office is a lesson that you're taking with you on this journey?
Well, there's an old saying that people don't care about what you know until they know that you care. And I think that if I've learned anything in these campaigns, what matters most is how much we libertarians care about other people. When we see the death and suffering in Iraq and Afghanistan, and with the sanctions and embargoes against the people of Iran and Iraq, we see the death and suffering of immigrants along the border, and we see mass numbers of people in drug war, this racially bigoted war that's falling disproportionately on African Americans. I think that's the key. You know, some of you know that I've been waging a very active campaign in North Carolina as part of the primary system there. And we went door to door in the African American neighborhoods in Wilmington. People were coming up to us and saying, Mr. Hornberger, the fact that you're here in this neighborhood is all I need to know. You have my vote.
Lincoln Chafee, a salient lesson that you've learned in previous runs.
As I said, I've been in 12 different campaigns and learned something from each of them. My first win as mayor, it took 30 days, it was so close, to certify the winner, all the recounts and going through all the machines, and 30 days later, I was the victor. My last run for mayor in my city, I won every ward in every district, so I've had all different experiences. I have lost as a re-election for senator. I had a primary and had to fight off a primary opponent, which I did successfully, almost a miracle how I did that. But weakened, we have a late primary in Rhode Island in September, and my opponent did not have a primary opponent, so he had all his money saved up, and I was broke at the end of the primary in 6 weeks, and couldn't do that. So you learn something from everyone, and that's what I bring as a candidate for the Libertarian nominee. As I said, I've got a lot of scars from being in the political trenches.
Joe Jorgensen, what did you learn last time around?
In 1992, I ran for U.S. Congress, and I naively showed up at a radio station thinking that we were going to have an honest dialogue, that he was going to ask me questions, and I was going to answer them and show him how the libertarian way was the best way of doing things. Quickly, it descended into have you stopped beating your wife questions. So I learned that we cannot show up to an interview and simply answer the questions that were asked. And if you haven't seen it yet, I suggest, especially if you're running for office, look up Carla Howell's Who's Driving system. What you need to do is you need to go in there with an agenda, you need to go in there with the points you want to make, you want to go in there and show how libertarianism is better. Don't answer the interviewer's question, but steer it to what you want to talk about.
Adam Kokesh, answer the interviewer's question, please, by telling us what you've learned from previous runs.
What kind of libertarian do you think I am, man? That's good advice. Well, I was endorsed by Ron Paul running for Congress in 2010, and it is a failed strategy. The Libertarian Party is the future of freedom in America, not the GOP. And what I learned from that race was, don't trust the Republican Party. But what I've also learned in the course of all of this is, how do we communicate these ideas more effectively? How do we turn this into a coalition party? How do we bring people in? And we've been playing their game for too long, arguing issues, talking about politics, discussing policy. It's nonsense. What unites us as human beings is freedom. We all have an independent will that wants to be respected. How do we communicate this in pragmatic principle with policy that gives everybody what they want? Localization. And I dare you to go out and try it. It's going to be so much more fun, so much more productive to talk about localization and principles and freedom rather than arguing issues and playing politics.
Reverend Supreme, I've heard you've run for office a time or two. What is a lesson of particular balance?
Well, I have discovered that if you are willing to run a creative and unconventional campaign, that you can reach millions of people, that you can use humor and satire and allegory and metaphors to get a message out to the people that they normally don't get. I've discovered the way to attract media. I have developed a communication strategy that has allowed me to do these things purely incidentally, purely accidentally, but 30 years of doing this has brought me to a level of notoriety and celebrity, if you will, that I am able to make this legitimate offer to you of my services. Thank you.
This is not your first rodeo. You've run for office in the past, correct? What's a lesson that you learned?
I ran in 96 for a Vermont state senate seat. It was a county seat, 3 Republicans, 3 Democrats, and myself, Coke and Pepsi. And it was so it was the same year Harry Brown, 1996, and I got 50% more votes in my county than Harry Brown got in the whole state. And the way I did that was I spun my story such that on the Sunday before the presidential election, within 48 hours of the presidential election, it wasn't that I was in the local paper. I was in a backwater in Vermont. I was in the Boston Globe. That it was the headline in the Sunday Boston Globe that I appealed to Vermont voters and I was getting all the laughs and that I was killing it. And so that's what I'm going to do for this party as your nominee. I'm going to spin that story into all kinds of coverage, maybe get to host SNL. Can you imagine that? That could happen. That could happen.
All right, new rounds. Lincoln Chafee is going to go first, and I suspect the answers here will either be 1 second or 60. The question is, is there anything about your past life, your life so far, which, if revealed by the media a week before the election, would be severely deleterious to your candidacy and perhaps the party?
No, I've been in enough campaigns that everything's been vetted. If anything, they're going to find positive things. Probably a lot of people here don't know that I can shoe a racehorse. And I went, after college, went to blacksmith school, learned how to shoe horses, and then worked for a blacksmith on the racetrack in Kentucky. And then went, often spent 7 years shoeing trotters and pacers in Calgary and Edmonton. And believe me, the trainers wouldn't hire me if I wasn't good. They want their horses to go fast. And I had a good living, and it was a great experience, and important to who I am today. I turned that into a positive, didn't I?
Totally fine. Speaking of horses, Vermin Supreme.
Yeah, well, let me say this. I believe that I am in the process of being vetted pretty heavily on the internet, and a lot of the haters out there are bringing up as much as they can, as much as they perceive to be a stain on my existence or my past associations or any of these things. The vetting is occurring now. So, yeah, sure, but I don't think it'll affect the actual thing.
When I was in Fallujah, Iraq in 2004, I had an experience that I deeply regretted, and it's actually really critical to me becoming a libertarian and waking up and really coming to oppose militarism at its deepest level. And it's that I was ordered to torture prisoners, and I should have disobeyed the illegal orders, and I didn't. I followed orders, and I'm never going to do that again. And I've done the best that I can to tell that story so that other people learn from it. Especially, we've done a lot of work in all of my organizations reaching out to people who are in the military, getting people who want to get out with a conscientious objector status, and to have the courage to defy illegal orders, knowing that people will support them for doing it. I don't think it's ever going to come out because as an attack, because it's something that I'm proud of having learned and grown from. But I will say, one issue that hasn't come up yet tonight, military and veteran suicides. We're going to privatize the VA by giving it a one ownership voting share to every single veteran in America. We're going to end the drug war, and you will not have 22 veterans committing suicide in America every single day after that. If you don't have a serious plan for veteran military suicides, you should not be taken seriously as a prospect for Commander-in-Chief.
Jacob Hornberg.
Yeah, we all go through life doing things, especially when we're young, that we're not really proud of. And many of you know that I practiced law for several years, 12 years. I was a civil and criminal trial attorney. And you make a lot of enemies in any endeavor, but in the law practice you make enemies. In the libertarian movement you make enemies, believe it or not. And you know, the nice thing about getting older is that you get to a point where you just say, I don't really care what people are saying about me anymore. You've got to just do what you think's right and just let the chips fall where they may.
Mark Whitney, skeletons in the closet that will come out and haunt you and everybody else in this room?
All my skeletons are out, and thank God my wife stayed with me. You know, Lincoln has stature. I have no stature. My civil disability, my 30-year-old felony conviction, I take to the grave. It doesn't matter what I do, right? If it wasn't for my wife, to this day, I wouldn't be able to rent a house. 70 million people in the United States, 25%, 1 out of 4 have a criminal conviction. This crowd is probably 1 out of 3. But I represent 25 million people that share my civil disability. Just as a collateral consequence of any generic felony conviction, no matter how old, you can't own a gun. Your Second Amendment rights are gone. My wife's Second Amendment rights are gone because if I have power to control that weapon, the law says the judge has to give me 5 years. And you know, people on my team tell me not to talk about the Constitution, but if you know the Constitution the way I know the Constitution, you know how to unwind this government.
Joe Jorgensen, besides your fandom of Red Eye, what's a skeleton in your closet that could haunt us all?
Yeah, unfortunately, I got nothing. I tell a story to my class about the one time I rebelled in high school, and I tell them I can't remember if this happened at 4-H camp or Girl Scout camp, but that probably tells you all you need to know. When I first joined the party, when I first started going to meetings, 1979 and in the 80s, I heard a lot of criticisms that, oh, you're just people who want to legalize pot. You just want to smoke pot, that's all. Somehow, I was one of the few who made it through 4 years of high school and 4 years of college in the 70s, never having even tried pot. In fact, I've never even tried a tobacco cigarette. My drug of choice is bourbon. I've always been in Kentucky bourbon. And so my argument has been, I can have my drug of choice, other people should have theirs. So my interest has always been in liberty and that people should make their own choices, not because what I want isn't legal. So I'm boring, got nothing.
Get a little bit of policy in here. Mark, you're going to go first here. Another issue that a lot of Californians in particular are interested in, the environment, and that libertarians have different approaches. It's a strange property or challenging property rights question. What is your sense about what a libertarian administration can or should do about climate change?
It's a market problem. It's all about what the people believe. I'm an entrepreneur. And if a majority of you people believe the world is coming to an end, that the planet's getting hotter, the seas are getting higher, people like me are going to invent products and services and sell them to you, and there's going to be a whole economy built around it, and that's not a bad thing. If we mistakenly build a huge economy around the mistaken impression that the world is coming to an end, that's fine. There's no problem with that. And if the world doesn't come to an end, we'll build other things. And if people believe the world is coming to an end in 10 years, guess what? It doesn't matter how big it is. It doesn't matter how big your tanks are. It doesn't matter how many missiles you have, because at that point, we're all in it together. That said, nobody is acting like the world is coming to an end. Because if people believe that, they'd be pulling their kids out of school, they'd be nicer to each other, we'd be walking on the beach. So, bring it on.
Well, I think environmentalism is a really important growing concern, and the fear-mongering around global warming uses this really ridiculous fear tactic. Now we see it especially with the Democrats and liberals who say, be very afraid, give us more power. I mean, I'm thinking about that scene from V for Vendetta, make them remember why they need us. No, it's nonsense. Regardless of what you want to see happen, who's the biggest polluter in the world? The United States military. And I guarantee no matter what you want to see, no matter what you think the solution is for pollution, for environmental challenges, for land use, cooperative, peaceful solutions will always be better than coercive government solutions. I want to see control of resources localized to the people who affect them. They have a say in how they're used. And you find this with localization, with every single issue. Everything gets better when your community and you as an individual are in charge, not someone in some far-off capital.
Joe Jorgensen, climate change.
Yes, this is exactly what I was talking about last night when I said that we need to talk about issues that excite the voters, excite other people who aren't in the party, and not talk about what excites us. And the environment is something that libertarians have traditionally stayed away from. However, especially younger people, the iGen generation, they're very concerned about the environment. So we need to show them how market solutions can work better than the government and better than what's going on now. One thing that I'm not shying away from is I'm advocating that we go with the advanced technology for nuclear power. And I pointed out, thank you. I was on a radio show a couple of weeks ago where I said basically what we had in the past was government picked the winner of the kind of nuclear power that we had. And so we ended up with a system that wasn't very good. What we've got right now is we've got companies competing for smaller advanced nuclear power. Rolls-Royce is one of them. And so what we need to do is let the market determine them. The old way, it's kind of like the government deciding whether Bill Gates or Steve Jobs win. We need to have the free market decide which is better.
I think it's clear that the government has screwed the pooch, and I think this is addressed in one of the Libertarian Party platform planks that states pretty clearly that the government should play no favorites. And I think the government has certainly played a favorite in the various industries, especially the fossil fuel subsidies, which has certainly contributed to this crisis. I believe it's a lack of long-range thinking and looking. Thank you.
It's a subsidy.
Pardon?
Militarism is a subsidy.
That too. So there is that, yes. The government's responsible for a massive amount of the difficulties that we face. And I think that it's incumbent upon the libertarians to explain, because so many people don't get it. They want to see regulation, but they don't understand that the regulation that the government presents is usually backfires, and it doesn't have a real effect on the problem. So yes, I believe that we need to study this more, and we need to be able to present real opportunities and solutions to the people, so they will in fact feel comfortable coming over to our side. Thank you.
Lincoln Chafee.
I could just take a moment to applaud Adam. I love truth tellers and what he said about what happened in Fallujah. How about taking a hand? On climate change, and Joe's right, the young people, it's a big issue, and as libertarians, we just cannot be ignorant of another fast-growing voting bloc, our young people, and they care deeply about the environment and about climate change, and that's just a reality, so we have to be smart. My own personal answer, as governor, we worked in Rhode Island with the New England states and the Eastern Canadian premiers. They're building tremendous dams in this empty wilderness, and I went up there to see it, so I know, I've seen it firsthand, and it's hydropower. And we just have to get involved in getting the infrastructure down. It's clean, it's renewable, the rivers run downhill, they have dam after dam, so you're getting the same molecule of water over and over again, and it's cheap. It's the cheapest power of all the power generations, with oil, gas, nuclear, coal, hydro's the cheapest. And so it's a win-win, and that would be my answer as president. And another positive, we get to work with our Northern Canadian neighbors. And anytime we can mutually benefit with our neighbors, that's a good thing.
We need to liberate the maple syrup from the once and for all. Jacob Hornberger, take us out. Climate change from your point of view.
When I was at the Nebraska Libertarian Party convention, I told the convention that I had a bone to pick with their convention. And that is that as a native Texan, I would prefer that their convention be held in July rather than February. And winter and I do not do well together. And so when people tell me that things are warming up, I say that's a bad thing? I mean, it's a good thing, you know? I mean, when it gets up to over 100 in South Texas, I mean, like, I'm ecstatic. But like, I'm not a scientist. You know, I've seen these debates on climate change, and I'm skeptical. But regardless, even if they're right, the worst thing we can do is to put the solution in the hands of the government. The one thing the federal government does well is it kills people. And we're going to put in the environment in charge these people? Ridiculous. We look to the free market. I mean, we've always had these kind of crises throughout history. It's the private property order and the free market and entrepreneurs that have the solution to this problem, certainly not the government.
All right, we're getting close to the end. I wanted to give the candidates the opportunity to ask each other a question. So we're going to start this round. Adam Kokesh, ask any question you want of any of your fellow candidates.
Well, it's hard to ask which one thinks they wouldn't turn into Gollum if they put on the ring. So I don't know, I suppose I would give the opportunity to Lincoln as someone who has the most governance experience here. Someone who has worn at least a smaller version of the Ring of Power. How do you feel that you or any libertarian can hold public office and wield that power and not be corrupted by it?
It's a challenge, yeah. I've been a senator, and I've seen how power goes to people's heads, and just when you think of the preposterous notion that Saddam Hussein was a threat to the United States of America, and if the vote in the Senate was 76 77 to 23. More Democrats voted for the war resolution than and of course every Republican except me, but more Democrats voted for it than voted against it. And power just goes to people's heads. Another scary thing about having been in the Senate, people would rather keep their membership card and do the popular thing than we get out of the Senate. That's why that vote was 77 to 23. It was a popular thing that Saddam Hussein was a threat, and I truly believe the senators knew that it was a false premise, but they wanted to keep that membership card. And I was glad to rip up my card. I wanted to do the right thing, vote against that horrible decision to invade Iraq.
Anybody on the stage, any questions about it?
Mark, I just want to ask you what your definition of a libertarian is.
To me, being a libertarian is more than believing in liberty and freedom. To me, I'm a libertarian for those reasons, but also because I'm an entrepreneur and an artist. The First Amendment of the United States, it's a big sandbox. It invites you to create. We don't have to edit our thoughts when we're working from a blank sheet of paper. The purest form of democracy is the blank sheet of paper, and that you don't have to edit your thoughts. You're free to think whatever you want to think. It doesn't matter what it is, and you try. And this is the party of try and try again. This is the party of keep banging till you get it right. And that's why I'm a libertarian. I'm the keep banging guy. This is the keep banging party. This is the party of the entrepreneur, by the entrepreneur, for the entrepreneur.
Ask any question to any candidate.
Well, Vermin followed me after saying I was a blacksmith on the horse racetrack, so can you flesh out the pony for every family?
Well, yes, I could, of course, keeping in mind that it's completely facetious and imaginary. But yes, the federal pony identification system is very, very important. You must have your pony with you at all times. Thank you.
Mark, you can ask a question to anybody.
This is for Adam, and it's a good question. I'm sincerely interested in your answer because of your experience in the military. I sued Barack Obama when he started bombing Libya. He said it was a limited kinetic action. And when I sued him, his lawyers responded in their briefs that who's to say what war is? Because the Supreme Court has never defined the word war. Well, we responded in our briefs that the Supreme Court has never defined the word cat. So my question, Adam, is if through some miracle I end up being president, I bring Ed Snowden on as Director of National Intelligence because he's a hero, would you serve as Secretary of Defense?
No. Not because of you. Because I believe that keeping that job in existence is one that we shouldn't have. It's a job that shouldn't exist. And I very much appreciate the endorsement of the question. You know, when we were running Veterans for Ron Paul, they had their fantasy cabinets, and I was listed as Secretary of Defense a number of times, and I had to say, hold on a second, hold on. You know, I was a sergeant, right? Like, I understand the limits of my capabilities. And I think that's a really important part of my platform to say, I'm not going to put on the ring, I'm going to throw it in the fire. Nobody is capable of being president. The levers of power that you would put your hands on shouldn't exist in the first place and cannot be wielded safely. And I would go further about, if I may, your definition of libertarian. I wouldn't disagree with any of it, but a libertarian is someone who believes in freedom, right? Are you libertarians? Everybody's a libertarian. Not all of them know it yet. Let's show them. That should be the mission of the party.
Jacob Hornberger, ask a question.
Okay, this one's to Adam. Okay, Adam, you say you're going to dismantle the federal government on day one. Now, we've talked about impeachment.
Well, not all of it. I mean, we can't. Let's be reasonable here. Like I said, this is a serious process and a long-term transition that has to happen in a peaceful, orderly, responsible way.
Okay. But it still involves a decree by you.
By the American people.
Well, you'll be the president, though. You've said that on day one you're going to decree that this government's going to be sent into bankruptcy.
Yes.
All right. We've talked about impeachment. So let's assume, just hypothetically, we've got a Democrat-Republican Congress, which is really one party, and they vote articles of impeachment and vote to convict you. And the next day, the 82nd Airborne Division shows up at the White House and says, you want to do this the easy way or the hard way? What are you going to do?
I have been asked before whether or not my platform is constitutional. Heck no, it is not. That's kind of the point. I've been asked, what are you going to do if you get impeached? If someone in the Supreme Court says, hey, no, you can't do that. We're not appealing to the Constitution here. We are appealing to the higher authority known as the Declaration of Independence, which says we have not only a right but a duty to alter and abolish systems of government that no longer serve us. If you say the American people can't do this, then we are going to be slaves to the federal government until it collapses under its own weight. You are saying that the American people don't have the authority to do this, that we can't. I disagree. When the American people say, we're going to put our foot down, we're not going to put up with this crap any longer, that's how it's going to be, and we're going to have freedom in America.
And Vermin Supreme, you have one question for one candidate.
This is a question for Mr. Chafee. Mr. Chafee, I would like to address your new slogan. It says, "Led with truth." That's a firearm reference, right?
I pronounce it lead.
I see. Thank you for the clarification.
In all my political career, I haven't had a single scandal. And I've always had high ethical standards. And so that is a slogan that I've earned.
Because this is America. We can afford lead for all the water.
As long as there's ponies with it.
Indeed, sir. Indeed. Thank you.
All right, I want to hear some closing statements. How about y'all? This has been a pretty great day. Thank you especially to the randomizer, which is just, you play with it at home, it's really fun. According to this magic button, first, with 90 seconds, Vermin Supreme.
Okay. Can a serious party put up someone who is perceived to be a joke candidate? I believe the answer is yes. It is absolutely in the framing. It is doable. We must own the joke. Hashtag, we are in on the joke. It will take a simple statement. Yes, we are the Libertarian Party. We are a serious party. We have been around for a while, and we know what we're doing. However, the duopoly, electoral, presidential thing has risen to the level of a joke. And with love and with spite, here is Vermin Supreme. Hashtag, we are in on the joke. Yes, there will be explaining to do, but as Larry Sharp has pointed out time and time again, that anything that starts that conversation is a good thing. And I will believe that I will indeed be a massive conversation starter. What about the down ballot candidates? I believe that the eyeballs that I will be able to draw, I believe that the people looking in this direction, it's once again up to the candidate itself. Will they be able to pivot? Pivoting is very important. It all depends on how you feel. What about that crazy guy with the boot on his head? Well, yes, as Mr. Supreme is a highly respected political satirist. Let us talk about the government. Or, oh my God, that guy? Geez, I don't know what they were thinking. But let's talk about the government. And thank you.
Mark Whitney.
Some people have asked me, in addition to that money question, like, you're a comedian, are you serious? Being president. Well, you know, one of the reasons I'm running for president is America needs a better joke. And I will give you Jimmy Morales. Jimmy Morales is a comedian. He's now the president of Guatemala. Zelensky over there in the Ukraine, he's a comedian. He beat a corrupt billionaire not orange, but it's a corrupt billionaire. He beat him in a landslide. Get this, on my birthday, April 21st. There's a little bit of karma going on there. Comedians are the best public speakers. Those of you who have thought about running for office, get your ass down to your local comedy club and start humiliating yourself. For real. That's how you build the skin to get comfortable. Look at the Democrats. They're involved in the biggest public speaking contest on earth. They have the people divided into so many little identity groups, they can't even talk. They can't say anything because they're afraid they're going to offend everybody. They're all about hate speech. It's not a thing. Just get up on your feet, start practicing. In my 60s, you know, one of the benefits of having a little money is I don't have to steal the money that's going to come in after I'm your nominee. Some of that money is going to get used to train these people in this party and turn you into some good comedians so you can become office holders and make things better.
Thank you, Libertarian Party of California, and all the good people that have spent their time over these days to be here and help grow the party. Thank you, Matt. Earlier you asked about what are the thresholds that you want to meet if you're the candidate. And I said, first get in the debates, and then I said win some states and grow on that momentum, get into the House, got modest thresholds. And how are we going to do that? How would I do that if I'm the nominee? And I would propose on 4 issues. First of all, the deficit. Both parties are dishonest about the deficit. And it's depressing to think about, but it's $22.6 trillion. It's growing $1 trillion a year. We're paying $400 billion a year in interest. The most painful payment we can make, it goes to no good interest on this deficit, and that's at low interest rates. And Trump can crow about the economy all he wants, but this is unsustainable. So these are the issues I would bring forward. The war, of course, and that's part of the deficit. These immoral wars we're waging across the country. And thirdly, the compromising of our constitutional liberties that Edward Snowden pointed out. I'd bring him home and drop charges. He's a hero.
He's
fourth issue.
Okay, here.
Off the ballot. Fourth issue, of course, is being honest. And these all tie together. The deficits, the wars, the personal liberties, and being honest. They all tie together. And that's how I would get the thresholds of getting in the debates, winning some states, getting into the House.
Thank you, JP. Joe Joyce.
Our goal is nothing more nor less than a world set free in our lifetime. That's from the preamble of our party platform. A simple statement of principle like that is enough for those of us who love liberty, which I believe is everybody here on stage and all of you in the audience. But it's not enough for most voters. My doctoral degree is in industrial organizational psychology, which deals with motivation and leadership. One of the things that we do is we help companies determine who's best for which job. And when you look at the job of the presidential candidate, you have to ask yourself, is this somebody who needs to excite libertarians about liberty who are already excited? Or is this to excite other people about what they're interested in? Matt, you asked earlier what we have that's different. I'm a teacher. I teach at a college, and it's my job to take complex, complicated scientific issues and to explain it so that college students can understand it. The very people who will be voting in this election. So I see that I can explain how when we dramatically cut government, our nation will prosper. That we can set healthcare free from mandates and medical costs will plummet. I can explain how when we end all foreign wars and become one giant Switzerland, that we will become safer. So please nominate me to be your presidential nominee. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Adam Kokesh. Thank you all for being here. It's really amazing to see how strong the Libertarian Party is right now. 2020 is going to be an amazing year one way or another. We have an amazing group of candidates. Thank you, Mimi, our state chair in California, for putting this together, and Matt for moderating. Really amazing experience tonight. We are stepping up our game. This is incredible. And I think we need to step up our game in terms of how we broaden the appeal and bring people in and show every American that they're libertarians too. Localization is how we do this. Democrats and Republicans are fighting over whether we go over a cliff at 70 miles an hour or 80 miles an hour. We have to say, look, it's time for us to step up and put our hands on the wheel and say, this isn't going to happen. There are a lot of things that are embarrassing about America right now, and I don't just mean that we have cadet bone spurs in the White House, or the Democrats and Republicans in general, or of course all of the obscene crimes of the federal government. But the treatment of Native Americans, and I was a student at Native American prep school when I really got in touch with this issue, but localization, again, can we give the Native Americans of this country their sovereignty back? Can we do the best that we can to restore all of the violations from treaties that have been broken by a criminal government? If we don't have an answer to that, we can't be taken seriously as standing on principle. I'm running because I want to make sure that we have a candidate who can articulate libertarian principles, who can get national media attention, who can get in the debates, who can leverage existing national name ID, who can unite every single American around what it means to be American and show the world why people like you and I are willing to put our lives on the line to stand up for justice, stand up to government, and ensure nothing less than a world set free in our lifetimes.
Thank you, Aaron. Chamber Point Order, you are last.
Thank you again, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to be in this debate. It's a real honor to be on stage with everyone here. You know, 3 years ago, President Trump said that he wanted to make America great again. And he doesn't get it, because you can't have a great nation when you've got a government engaged in state-sponsored assassinations, sanctions and embargoes on innocent people, coups, invasions, torture, when you've got a system based on mandatory charity, a racially bigoted drug war. What he doesn't understand is that you've got to have a free nation first, and out of that free nation comes greatness. The Democrats are no different. They're riddled with hypocrisy. They love the poor, needy, and disadvantaged while they wage this war on immigrants, while they become the greatest warmongers in our country, want to drop more bombs, want to start more wars. We are the hope of this party, and you are. You are the light that is shining through this darkness, and that light is brightening. Some of you may wonder about me. I've been in the educational arena for 30 years, and you may be wondering, oh, is he going to run an educational campaign if we make him the nominee? I can tell you that I believe that the role of a candidate is to go in there and win and beat these people. Now, I'm not unmindful of what that means, of how difficult that is. But I'm like Han Solo when he said to Chewbacca, don't tell me the odds, let's just get in there and fight.